cop or bad cop, isn't it? That's the question. And will it make a difference? My name is Mark Eiset. I'm a Swedish critic based in Copenhagen nowadays. And the title of our first discussion is a very dramatic one. Code Red. Can cities save the planet? And here to answer this are Nadja Gullestrup Christensen, Danish youth delegate to the UN.
Exactly.
Which is a grandiose title, I think. What does a Danish youth delegate to the UN do?
So what we do is that we represent the Danish youth at UN conferences such as the UNFCCC, which is obviously why we're here today.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, we're also representing the Danish youth at CBD, which is biodiversity conferences. So this also means that Emma, the other Danish youth delegate, and I, we're really interested in how these links and how we actually solve more crises at the same time than only one.
How often are you in New York?
Honestly, I haven't been because of COVID. I have been, in New York as a private person who just wanted to see it because young people we love to experience.
But you haven't been to the headquarters.
But I haven't been there because I've been a Danish youth delegate to UN for 2 years actually. Okay. But I've been a lot in online settings where I could dream about being there, but sitting in my home.
It's for an architecture critic, it's a terrific place to go. So I've been there. Lovely place. Warmly recommended.
Thank you.
Ishtiaq Sahir Titas, simply called Ish. Good. Architect and Vice President of UIA, the International Union of Architects in Bangladesh. A warm welcome to Glasgow. And Susanna Pedersen, Director of UNEP-DTU.
That's right.
What is that?
Well, we are a science-based advisory services group based in the UN city in Copenhagen, and we are engaged in implementing a UN environment's climate and energy strategy. And we work towards helping emerging economies, developing countries in their low-carbon transition. And
UNEP-DTU stands for United Nations Environment Program at the Technical University in Denmark.
Yes.
Okay. And you're based also in, I suppose, the school, right? In the school facilities, or do you only sit in Nordhavn?
Only in the UN city in Nordhavn,
okay.
yes.
Okay. So we have two representatives from the region that wants to call itself the most sustainable region in the world, right? And one representative from Bangladesh, which I know almost nothing about, sorry.
No, we have.
But
we are coping up.
Yeah, but what I do know about Bangladesh is that Dhaka, your capital, has 9 million people. The population of 9 million people. It's one of the most densely populated areas in the world. If you compare that to the Nordic region, where, Copenhagen has about 1 million, right? Stockholm 1 million, Helsinki 600,000, Oslo 600,000.
Yeah.
Dhaka can really make a change if you go onto the path of sustainability, right?
Yeah. I'm from Bangladesh, but our UIA headquarters in Paris, so just to correct you. But you see, we formed an SDG commission in UIA, and you will be surprised that 2 commissioners, one from Dhaka and one from Copenhagen, to connect the two extreme options. One is the extreme good, another one is the extreme challenges. So Dhaka has many challenges, and one of the main challenges is the mobility, definitely, and also population. But I think the population can be seen as a strength if you consider it as a resource. And resources are, you can mobilize resource.
Yeah.
So, and also the infrastructure. So public infrastructure is less here. So we are trying to develop those. And in 2024, we'll be entitled with as a developing country. At the moment, Bangladesh is LCD. And that will give an impact towards the sustainability issues. We're trying to avoid any coal-powered power generation.
Yeah.
We had power shortage, but now the city has fully electric coverages there. So there is a potential of the people and the culture.
But you can make a tremendous change, but just by making one little change, so to speak.
Two things are happening. Public transportation is coming up very fast in next 3-4 years, and also we had the scarcity of parks and open space, public space.
Yeah.
These are spurring many. From my firm also designing many of those.
Yeah.
So these are the two connections, the connectivity and the public space. This can also catalyze a change in the challenging city like Dhaka.
So you're still a practicing architect?
I am a practicing architect for the last 30 years.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm just thinking about this paradox that the Nordic region claims to be such a front runner within this field, but it's so sparsely populated. So we haven't really got, it seems, the muscles behind it. Am I on the wrong or right path here?
The challenges are everywhere. Even in Copenhagen, you have challenges with cities.
Yeah.
Dhaka. So place is different and culture is different and the challenges are different.
Yeah, yeah.
Cities, I agree with the thing that is a red code. We have to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, in 2050, more than 50%, almost 60 to 70% people will live in cities. And do you know how much space the cities occupy in the planet? It is only 2 to 3%. So more than 50% people will live in 2 to 3% of the...
Is it healthy? Is it healthy to crowd things up like that?
No, not at all.
It's not? It's not. But is it the most sustainable region in the world? Is it kind of a selling point first and foremost, or what is it?
Yeah, so as a young person who likes to be critical about the system that we live in, I don't know, I feel like a lot of us, we're kind of skeptical, we're kind of tired of hearing everyone saying that Nordic leadership and we're so good and we're the best in the world and we're going to be everything. Not because that it's not positive that we are having the ambitions, but I think that it is really important to be the biggest critic about yourself, because if you don't see all the problems and only talk about the good things, then you're not acting. And I know that, for example, Copenhagen are having really good ambitions about being the first capital in the world, which is carbon neutral in 2025, and that is of course ambitious. But what is important to remember is that Denmark or the Nordic region is not going to solve the climate crisis alone. We're going to do it in collaboration with other countries around the world. So what we have to do is we need to develop the solutions that can be scaled and exported to other countries, which is where we also need to find solutions that is possible for cities that doesn't look like Copenhagen, because of course it is easier to make Copenhagen carbon neutral by 2025 than it would be to make a city with 10 million people carbon neutral. You have like some really different challenges when you have other kinds of cities, and that is where we need to contribute with our knowledge and to help and to have some meaningful partnerships which is equal with other countries and other cities around the world.
But is the case that we're more aware of these questions than the rest of the world? Have we focused on them longer than many other countries, the developing world, for example?
Well, I think certainly the Nordics have focused for longer. I used to be the director of Europe's largest public-private partnership addressing climate change in Europe, and I was the Nordic director, and I united the top 2-3 cities in each of the 5 Nordic countries to work towards climate challenges. And I definitely saw that there was a willingness and also a willingness to collaborate not only amongst the cities themselves, but also with the civil society, private sector, academic sector. So there's a tradition for collaboration in the Nordics that have really been put to good use to address the climate problems. Just recently I spent 2 years in Seoul, Korea, and now I work on a global scale, and I could see, comparatively speaking, in other countries, there's not that tradition for public-private partnership. There's more hierarchical relationships, and mayors are almost people that you can never talk to or never approach.
They're up there somewhere.
They're up there in the hierarchy somewhere. So I think we do benefit from low levels of hierarchy in the Nordic region, and also a go-do attitude where everyone can contribute, everyone will be heard. And this is certainly some of the things that we can export apart from, actual sustainable solutions.
How good are we at collaboration? Does the Nordic region have one and the same sustainability agenda, for example, or is it different from each country?
Well, in my book, it's similar, but each of the Nordic countries also have different challenges. So
Why?
there are,
not really, do they? Not really.
a little bit. It depends on the density of the cities. It depends also on, let's say, traditions. If you take Finland or Sweden, where there's a tradition for building in wood, wood and construction, compared to Denmark and other places where there's still a proclivity for using cement and steel and glass and stuff like that. So there are differences, and I think we will address the built environment and the city's role in that also today. So I think we can talk about that, because cities certainly have a very, very big remit and mandate in terms of controlling the built environment. This is almost all over the world, that city planners and city authorities have the right to issue construction permits. They do planning. They also can set demands, etc. And I think if we bear in mind the challenge, buildings account for about 40% of CO2 emissions. And at the moment, there is one New York being built in the developing countries every single month. But hold on, in China alone, one New York is being built in China every single month. So if you look at the magnitude of new construction going on across the globe, and you know that buildings stand for, on average, 70 years, and the carbon emissions in buildings are very big from the material side, from the construction side, from the operations of the buildings, and also from the, the deconstruction, or whenever you take down buildings, you can see the magnitude of the challenge.
So the question in the title, can cities save the planet? Relevant, yes or no?
Relevant.
Relevant?
Relevant, yes.
Relevant.
But not alone.
Not alone, okay.
I think that in general it's important and it's crucial to remember that no one can do it alone. You could also say rural areas, they won't also not be able to solve the climate alone. But of course we need to remember to have the cities in mind, and they can make a huge contribution to solving climate change. But we just need to remember that it's not alone.
Can I add to her? Cities are considered as a growth engine. Without cities, people cannot live. But it has to have an urban-rural linkage. So that's a very important point, that we concentrate our wealth and energy towards our cities, and cities has to be compact and has to be equitable. But at the same time, we have to develop, we have to build and construction and make our environment, put our environment into challenge. So when you develop, you have to include people. So public-private partnership, I would like to add another P, is the people's, where people's voice can be heard. And at that point, you have to include a new methodology, new innovation, how to include public voices. In Bangladesh, one of the mayor is from Narayanganj, Selina Hayat Ivy. She's a rebellion from the own government. She has introduced the public, private, and the people's voice into the scenario.
How?
So that
What has she done?
this is through her good governance.
Yeah. But isn't this just called democracy?
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, but you look at our conference. This is an discrimination. We are in the blue zone. People are in the green zone.
Yeah.
Some people are in the queue. They cannot come in here.
Yeah.
And people are afraid of. Yesterday, I saw Greta sitting on the street, and a lot of police is surrounded her. So this fear about people has to be evaded. Then the cities will be a better place. The youth are the primary force to evade this fear from our administrative system. So when you include people into any development project, that means civil society, NGOs voice has to be there. So how do you incorporate? Because when a private partnership collaborate with the government, he will definitely, the entity will try to achieve the most profit out of it. So when you think about all the profit, then the social, cultural, all other equity issues are being compromised. That's why we make our cities a difficult place to live in. But through the culture, through the heritage, preserving the local, as you are questioning that whether there is a difference among the Nordic region. Same where I come from is Indian subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal. Everybody thinks they are all same. But my dialect is different. And my food is different, my culture, my song is different. So there is a difference, but we are like Asian. I had to fill up the form that are you an Asian or
exactly.
So these are the things we have to start thinking new way. This is an very right thing to, if you want to save our
But I mean, but getting the power behind the decisions, you need to be many people, right? More people, more power. And I'm thinking that if the Nordic region teamed up behind one single agenda, we'd be, how many? 30 million or something? 25 million, thereabouts, people. I mean, what a fantastic powerhouse we would be within. I mean, then one could really talk about being the region of the most sustainable region in the world, I'm thinking.
I tell you one thing. In 2017, 19 cities committed they will turn into carbon zero city by 2050. And Copenhagen is one of them. But now there are many joined with those 19s, and it's more than 50 cities has committed that they will try to achieve carbon neutrality by 50. This is a government commitment, the state commitment, the people's commitment. Cities run by mayors, and mayors are on 5th we are having a talk. Mette Ramsen from Copenhagen will speak in one of our sessions. Is in there. So the challenges are always there in the city. When the people leave the street, the people. Now you see in Copenhagen you have 60% people, if I'm right, has bicycle, ride bicycle. And
every day to work, back and forth.
So less car in the street. But you see in here, all the big cars are lined up for the ministers, and it's road is blocked. So why do you, in first place, do you have to have the car?
And how did we get here?
By train.
By train? By?
Oh, I don't want to talk about
Neither
that.
do I. You were going to comment on something before you...
So it was really just that I wanted to add that we're often talking about the Nordic region, or Denmark as, you know, one whole, and I think that it is so important to remember and keep in mind the diversity of even our region. And also, like Denmark, we often see that the debate about like sustainability and green transition can be polarized between people in the cities, people from Copenhagen and people from Southern Jutland. And it's just, I don't want to see that polarization, which is also why I think that it's really crucial to have meaningful and equal partnerships between the different parts of the countries. And then I also just wanted to add to what you said about adding people to the public-private partnership, because if we are designing a lot of solutions that are so good, But if people don't want to use them, then it doesn't matter that we have an amazing public transport system that a private company has built. But if no one is in those trains, then why are they there? And the only reason why people in Denmark are bicycling and the reason why they like them is that we have a culture where people, they are, motivating each other, and it's norm and it's social norms that we do that, and that is the reason why we're doing it, not because, the public sector does that. And of course it needs to be a, partnership, because we need the public system to build like the road and everything, but you just can't do the transition without the people.
What comes first? The people's wish or the fact that you build those bike lanes? If you build them, the bicyclists will come, maybe.
That was exactly my point. I recognize, of course, what Natalie is saying, but it also has to do with, let's say, the planning of the authorities, of actually, making the choices available to people and making them meaningful. And I think, as you said, the whole discussion about carbon neutrality, setting ambitious targets for yourself and your city, it really helps to push the boundaries for cities to think, let's say, big and also start making the choices. At my organization, UNEP DTU Partnership, we have issued a guide also for emerging economies and the developing countries in terms of their cities, the types of choices and planning choices they can make to sort of assist them in making those choices. And then once you start debating which choices you can make in terms of what sort of public transport you can make available versus what is the most sustainable choice, then you can start also including the citizens and the groups affected. If you want to, build a tramway through a neighborhood, or you want to do something else, you want also the citizens to be heard, to hear whether it's a good choice for them. But it's the public sector, and certainly the cities, they can use their planning power. They do have administrative powers at their disposal that hopefully they will use them for better and for the good. But committing to targets publicly can certainly, make it easier to make the right choices.
A short and snappy answer to this question. What is the situation in Bangladesh? This public-private relationship, which is very strong in the Nordic region, is that also very strong in Bangladesh?
She just mentioned that if you built a fantastic metro by a private entity and nobody does right. So Dhaka is a city with less than 15% of road network. So we need more road network in the city.
What does that mean? Sorry, less than 15% of road network?
The open road system has to be 25 to 30% of the city. But our one is less.
Okay.
But in that city, we are building a very high quality, advanced metro rail system funded by a Japanese JICA. Now, when you get down from the train, where you are going to go, the network below the ground, on the ground is not there. But we have to develop first this, then we should avail that above the ground network. Now, the people were not consulted. People were not there. Their voice was not there. So you spend millions and millions of dollars with a private entity and the partnership. They will take some money, but if people doesn't ride, like 50 taka per ride, but at the moment on ground, people are riding on 10 taka only.
Okay.
So how he is going to pay five times more for a single ride?
And how? What's the answer to that?
Maybe I'm affluent, I can do that. But the common people, so that's the thing. You have to make a right design for it. It's not that you just provide it. It has to be appropriate one, the appropriate solution for the place, for the people, and for the culture as well. Most of the people, these infrastructure solution at the moment happening all around the world, it should not be universal. It should be place to place, country to country, culture to culture. has to be different. There is no universal design.
No, of course.
Maybe
of course.
the road sign can be, you can
Do
put
you
the-
mean that what's happened in Dhaka is that one has just applied a
I don't
universal
agree
design?
I don't agree with what's happening in Dhaka.
Okay.
I think that
It-
they should first build let me move first on the ground. Then let me take you to up above the ground.
Okay.
I cannot move on the ground.
No.
There is no management system. That has to be developed.
Okay,
So
okay.
Our mayor is here
Yeah.
in COP26.
Yeah?
And we are working with mayor. Now he's listening. At least, it's a government decision that when you get some money from some donor agency and also World Bank, I would like to heavily criticize all the donor agency, World Bank, ADB, and also IMF. They are funding the project. Those are not required for my country, So why do you come up? Because there are some expert from some other country comes to Bangladesh and do not consult. In the name of consultation, they try to put their own.
Is it, and it's a Western consultant or
some
knowing
Western
better than everybody else, kind of? It's a colonial kind of perspective, right?
Colonial.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like this.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
have to get rid of because we were also the colony.
Could we try to make a list, maybe? How can cities save the planet? We've touched upon bicycles. We've touched upon public transport. This means a reduction of car traffic. How come it is so incredibly difficult to propose such a question for a politician? Susanne?
Well, of course it's difficult because there are difficult choices to be made, but coming back to the building sector, the built environment is the single most important area of influence that cities have, because they have the regulatory powers. They're responsible for the planning, for the zoning, for setting the building codes, for enforcing the building codes. They can even set up demands for the low carbon buildings, etc., and it constitutes a huge amount of carbon emissions. The second area where they have at least some responsibility is in the energy system, and energy efficiency is one of the areas. Our center is the global hub on energy efficiency for the UN Sustainable for All initiative, C for All, and we see that energy efficiency is a low-hanging fruit in reducing carbon emissions, but it's not being applied well enough.
And let's try to be as specific as possible, and just, in practice, what would that mean? How can you reduce the carbon footprint?
Well, obviously, everything ranging from your appliances, again, to the buildings can, be more energy efficient. The transportation can be more energy efficient. But a lot is also to do with behavior, because you can set all kinds of targets, you can devise all kinds of technologies, etc. But especially in energy efficiency, behavioral change is actually what is really needed to apply.
And when returning to the car just for a moment, the reason why we have such difficulty in limiting car traffic is because behavior is simply what it is. People do not want to be without their car. Nadia?
Yeah, so was there a question there?
No,
Or
I'm
is this
thinking
like
that
cars
you've
in
been
general?
involved in this
Yeah.
in Copenhagen, right? You've been debating this question in Copenhagen.
And I
Try to limit car traffic. And I know from a Swedish perspective that we've admired Copenhagen because in Copenhagen one has reduced the amount of parking places. I don't think one does it anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. But reduce the amount of parking places with 2 to 3% every year. It's like, picking away at it, and no one really notices,
Some notice.
or do you? Do you? Okay.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't
don't
buy
have a
that.
car.
I don't have a car. You have a car.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't use it very often. I bicycle.
That's just what
but
you're
still.
saying up here on stage.
No, but what I think is really interesting is also the idea that the kind of still exists, but is kind of, also changing, is that everyone want to earn a car. Like, every family thinks that they are supposed to have a car, and that is a problem, not only because obviously the transport of the car itself when it's driving, and a lot of them using fossil fuels, that is a problem, but also just, the thing about producing that car. And of course, is, if you are living in a rural area, have no neighbors, everything like that, then maybe you need that car. But what is interesting in Copenhagen is seeing how many cars that are still there in those parking spots that are not being used. So really trying to find a system where you can share it in a like meaningful and beneficial way, where you need fewer cars and fewer parking spots and everything like that. And what I think is interesting is also that we're seeing that happening, because we do have Green Mobility and other companies in Copenhagen and the cities around Copenhagen who is trying to develop a system where it's possible to have an app, you know, borrow that car, which is an electric car, and then pay for the use of it instead of, you know, paying for the car itself. And I think that that kind of circular sharing economy is really interesting, because there's huge opportunities for cities because people live so close to each other. So that is just really something that I think is so interesting and that we need to dive into even more.
Do you think it's likely that we'll see in 10 years' time, will we see more or less cars in Copenhagen?
I think we would see less,
okay.
But also because people,
Promising.
you know, I think what is interesting is also when it's a cheaper, you know, solution. I have a lot of, you know, friends who, obviously a lot of them care about the climate, but also a few of them who don't really care about the climate, but they can't, you know, they can't afford a car. So that is why they're using Green Mobility, because then they can only like, you know, buy the car for the time they need it, or, you know, rent it. And I think that is so amazing when it's the economic solution as well.
But I think also, like the gentleman expressed in Dakar or Bangladesh, in many global cities, it's really about not having very many transport means available, certainly with a very low coverage, where the infrastructure may have, you know, A to B to C points of connections, but then it doesn't cover large percent of a city. So the choices are not so large at the moment. So again, the national and the sub-national sector can work to make interconnections, and I think certainly in the Nordics or in Europe, etc., we have good examples of where you are connecting long distance trains with metros, with buses, with light rails, and also even bicycling infrastructure. You can take bicycles on the trains in Copenhagen. So you're connecting things and you're making it available, and you're also using subsidies to at least make it affordable for people. So the choice is not whether you can afford to take the new metro or not.
Decision, rather.
It can be a governmental decision, so you should use the means available.
I'm working on my list here. I'm working on my list.
Let me just add to her. You know, the national policy has to be there. And distribution of wealth. Owning a car, we are talking about only mobility. Think about the building construction. Why do you have to large building, large shopping mall where you consume more energy? But you can also have this, look at the infrastructure you require for a bicycle, look at the infrastructure you require for the tram, very little infrastructure you need. Whereas we go for the option of having a bigger one with big money. So business and industry, you talked about the other people, we cannot do alone. It's true. In this discussion, there should be business. As along with youth, we are the professionals, there should be business in industry. These are the private sector. They are the catalysts, not to do things what we think that should be right. And they are the people who are actually making it code red, because he thinks as a business person, he takes as a profit, he wants to sell the car, and it is in our mindset, the car is a sign of wealth in all of the, I come from the Asian region, I can see in Asia, owning a car, making a large tall glass tower in the hot sunny weather, even in the Middle East, is a criminal offense actually.
Okay, criminal offense?
Yes.
Wow, that's a strong expression. Yeah, but you stand behind it, obviously.
No, because you have to responsible. You know, goal number 9, it says that we have to be responsible using our resources. SDG goal. So we are not listening to this.
No.
You make a glass tower and in the middle of sun, and then you use resilient system, air conditioning
and the air conditioning.
You spend money on that. Why?
But okay,
look at India. It's happening.
So what we have here now is bikes, metro, green mobility. Do not build high rises.
No, I mean large structure.
Large
I mean,
structures?
Big building is not required because
No.
you know, I mean, look at the Montparnasse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tall Montparnasse.
Almost the only tall building
only tall
in
building
Paris.
and they want to refurbish it after 70 years or 60 years.
That's okay, isn't it?
And it's very expensive. Nobody, the owners cannot pay for this.
No.
And it's not sustainable to retrofit it again anymore.
No. No.
So why do we build it
Yeah.
in the first place?
but-
To show the might, power. So stop showing might and power.
Okay, stop showing might and power. That's a good one. To return to what we touched upon in the beginning, the importance of densification. Is it possible that you densify a bit too much, maybe? Like in Dhaka, is that a too dense
too dense.
city? Okay.
But you know, instead of why do you have the density? We have to make the satellite. I mean, you have to disperse. So solution of Dhaka is not in Dhaka. It is on the other cities. If you develop other cities, it has to be similar. You had been to Seoul, as you mentioned. Look at the cities. It's so big. It's unmanageable. We have been telling for last 7-8 years that make your city compact, make your city manageable, make your city more serviceable, so basic service can be provided. And it's a walkable city.
Yeah.
It has to be walkable.
And
Look
that's
at
a
the
health
youth-
issue too,
Health
isn't
issue.
it?
And healthy city is I mean, if you want to get rid of red code, you have to make your city healthy. Not only environment friendly, not only the carbon friendly. When you walk, definitely you ride bicycle, that's an environmental friendly or carbon neutrality. I had been to a conference in 2018 in China, Weihai. Weihai is one of the city most livable city out of the 10 livable city. And there was a slogan written in Chinese. So I asked my friend, what's written? It's so big letters. This is a conference of architects, engineers, and planners.
Yeah.
All the professional, urban professionals.
Yeah.
See, I mean, he translated this like, get rid of mistakes we done in Beijing and Shanghai.
Okay.
Then he's told me that, look, we had bicycles, we followed Western global north, and we introduced, get rid of our bicycles, and their streets are now full of bicycles, our streets are full of cars after 20 years. So this is a realization. And I'm connected to a group of architects in China. They are trying to revive, not to make the large structure. Go for the small, very friendly, human scale. You can gossip. I mean,
The street
evening
corners.
time, street-
Yeah. The coffee
That's
shops.
the life. That's
Yeah.
the people's life. That's the city.
Exactly. I've got one thing that I would like you to answer, short and snappy. What would make you really happy if we leave Glasgow in 2 weeks' time and have been able to do? Susanna, that's a really tricky question. You've got
is.
about 30 seconds to
Sure.
answer it.
Well, I think if we get all parties, both public and private, to commit to reaching the targets and, preach what they, rather do what they preach, I think that then we will be more on the right way.
So less talking and more doing.
Yeah, more action.
Ish.
Okay. We have different stakeholders. And whatever we discuss here is going to go in vain if we do not have cross-stakeholder exchanges. Because
And could you give an example of that? Very short.
like
What is
I'm an architect, we are the professionals, and she's representing youth, and there are civil society, there are a grassroots organization, there are slum dwellers. We have to think about the slum dwellers as well. So if you do not have a dialogue and exchange of views and also the innovative ideas, the solution, that we have to turn into actions. So if you want to turn into action, there has to be engagement of cross-sectoral engagement has to be there.
Cross-sectoral
So
engagement.
the government, it's true, the government alone cannot do this.
No.
It's a period. We don't, that's why it's in green zone and blue zone. But I think after Glasgow, in next COP should be green zone and blue zone should merge together.
Okay,
This is
okay.
my,
But the cross-sectoral engagement, is that the government
with
Who
the public sector.
With the public sector, who can set
Also,
the agenda.
among the public sector.
Okay.
Like the investment. You will not find very few people here who are the investor, who are the entrepreneur, the business, the money.
The
That's
money is
thing.
not here.
You know, in 2030, we'll require $90 trillion to mitigate the problems of the cities. This is in UN Habitat's data. $90 trillion to resolve all this problem, because people will be coming to the city, they need hospital, they need accommodation, they need work. How do we get this money? So you have to adapt ourselves, what we have, and then also make an engagement.
And that is really following up on that, because what would make me really happy after Glasgow is also that we ramp up the finance, because it's so crucial if we want to adapt the cities to the climate change, if we want to build buildings that are actually sustainable, that cost money, and we need to deliver on those money that we have already promised to do. Like richer countries have promised the $100 billion that we keep talking about, but we also need to deliver on that. And the reason why I think that is so important is that we, as northern countries, we keep, talking about ourselves being the leaders, but we can't be leaders alone. We need to finance the green transition and contribute to in the rest of the world. And the start and the beginning there is really delivering on the money that we have already promised to deliver.
Okay. What do you think about the 1.5 degree goal? Is it alive and kicking still?
No, absolutely not.
It is not.
We have just published the UNEP emissions gap report, and it shows very clearly that the gap between 1.5 and the reality is huge. So right now we are on a pathway to a 2.7 degree world. 2.7 degree. With when you count the pledges that countries have made in their NDCs, etc.
If you want to see positive examples of what architecture can do, right, you could have a look at this book, and we've got plenty of them lying there, so you can just pick them and go home and read them, put them on your bedside table, and thank you very much for listening. Thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we just stand together?
Yes, sure.
Can I have another book, and I can give